Guys, we want to thank you guys for everybody who supported the show. This is coming at the tail end of a 5-hour stream. Patrick Henningsen will be joining us as our next guest, and we're going to get a little time with him to hear his stance on Israel-Palestine. Why don't we bring him in while we're waiting to hear from Leslie? You want to do that? Because Leslie...
No. She's not there?
She's not there anymore.
Okay.
So let's just jump in with Patrick Henningsen. Patrick Henningsen, TNT News Radio. He does a lot of great work. 21st Century Wire. Patrick, thank you so much for joining the show today. Let us know right now your thoughts on, as we're approaching, I don't know, it was October, November, December, January, February, March, April. What are we on? 7-8 months of the operations that have been taking place in Gaza, Israel. Is there any end in sight? What are your thoughts today as we are witnessing now the bombing of Rafah? I mean, literally, they moved all these people into southern Gaza, into Rafah. It's a refugee camp. Over 1 million people, and now they're bombing Rafah. And at the end of the day, we also find out Axios News reported it's not a red line for the Biden administration. Is there such thing as a red line for the Biden administration, Patrick?
Firstly, it's S-E-N on my surname, S-E-N.
Oh, Henningsen. All right.
Yeah, the
Can
Danish.
You say that, please, Jamie?
Just like
sorry about that.
Just like Kim Iverson.
Patrick Henningsen. Yeah.
Yeah, S-E-N. Craig, yeah, it's just it's a kind of really tragic situation. It's 7 months in. You know, when have we ever had to deal with an issue like this? After, you know, and things have been allowed to go this far in full view of the world, and you know, normally the brakes would have been applied a long time ago. So we don't have any precedent for how to manage this. Like, you know, in the international system, basically. It's never happened before. Normally, genocides are litigated after the fact. We're sifting through the evidence, looking for evidence. This one has happened in full view, and they're carrying on. And I think it's pretty obvious that this is part of a bigger program by Israel. They do see the finish line in their eyes, is they've always wanted to deal with the Palestinian problem, as they call it, in Gaza. And they're very close to being able to push, you know, hundreds of thousands of people out. You saw the scenes of this boy that managed to scale the wall at the Rafah border crossing, only to be beaten by Egyptian soldiers on the other side. You know, it's just like, imagine, you know, hundreds of thousands of people. What do? They've been put, as you said, Craig, pushed into this little area, and it's told it's a safe zone, and then it's getting, of course, bombed. And we're not surprised, because this is what Israel's been doing throughout this whole thing. The question is, who's going to restrain them? Certainly not Washington. They're trying now after 7 months, but my personal theory is it's not because Biden wants to withhold munitions, it's because they don't have any. They've emptied their stocks between Ukraine and Israel. So the question is it more embarrassing for a great power like the United States to say it's out of ammo, or is it more embarrassing or problematic for them to try to restrain Israel at this stage in this disaster? That's the political question, actually.
Yeah. If I'm hearing you correctly, you said there was another motive for Israel to do what they're doing. This really wasn't. We had Ryan Christian on today talk about, was this ever really about Hamas? I mean, what is their motives here, and why what they're doing in Gaza today?
So the motive is the final solution for the problem, which is to ethnically cleanse, or begin to ethnically cleanse the population, starting with Gaza and then with the West Bank. And so that's absolutely the problem. You know, they want to eliminate this problem. The problem is the Palestinian people to the state of Israel. They don't want to manage them forever. They don't want to promise a two-state solution forever. That train's already left the station a long time ago. Even most people are admitting that now. It was never even viable to begin with. But so the final solution is to get rid of them, and the United States is fully compliant. They're facilitating, they're enabling this at every stage. So it's funny, you look at the U.S. floating pier, this port that the U.S. military is constructing right on the central line splitting north and southern Gaza. This is now operational. They're announcing it's almost operational at the same time Israel is hitting Rafah and taking over the border crossing. That's not a coincidence. This
Okay.
this is a tactical operation, and it's designed to really corner the Palestinian people and give them no option or no choice but to basically to push them out through Rafah.
Yeah. It seems like if you create the problem, then you could present the solution. We're having a hard time, Patrick, getting aid in there. So let's build a port so which we can bring the aid in. Why don't you just let the borders open in the first place to let the aid get in? What are you insinuating that this port is going to be used for? Is this to get rid of, to complete the ethnic cleanse of Gaza, to get rid of the Palestinians altogether?
But that's not how it's going to be marketed. The port, think about it. The U.S. has taken a major hit by basically enabling what the rest of the world outside of North America and the G7 consider a genocide. So how do you turn that around? Well, they started by using this to introduce the World Food Kitchen, to provide, ready-made meals for Palestinians from a Michelin star chef, as if that's what the people need and want. Okay, that changed that began to change the public relations tenor, because it was like, no, the State Department, USAID, they're providing the meals to the Palestinians, providing aid. And so the average American can't work out the fact that the U.S. has enabled Israel in order to block aid coming from the Rafah and from Egypt. They're normally 400 semi trucks per day before October 7th, down to 0. And all you have to do, as you said, Craig, is open that up. That's the most practical, easy solution. So why is that not being allowed to happen? Why are they doing this very expensive and complicated workaround? And so the next phase would be the U.S. military evacuating the Palestinians, and the U.S. military as a force for good and humanitarian good in the world. Look what they're doing for these poor Palestinians, and taking them to Europe, taking them to Cyprus, taking them to Lesbos or whatever Greek islands, or over to America eventually, where they can live the dream. But that's where they want to go with this. They need to turn around the U.S. military's culpability and enabling of the Israeli genocide and make it into a positive human rights story. And they'll do it.
Yeah.
And they'll sell it, and it'll work. It'll absolutely work in America.
Patrick, and it's great to meet you and great to have this conversation right now. We've been talking about this pretty much all day, this idea that we need to be able to challenge people in power. And we had it even earlier on our campaign news. You're talking about every single candidate. Everybody seems to be in the pocket of the Zionists. Nobody is championing this. Maybe some of the candidates on the lower end are championing a little bit of at least supporting the protesters in the street. But one of the things that came to our attention, and this seems to be like a big deal from last week when we saw the anti-Semitism bill go through the House. Isn't this exactly the tool that maybe what you're saying is, as they're working on spinning this into a peace movement, in the meantime, we're not allowed to have any pushback, no questions. It becomes that it's racist, it's anti-Semitic to have any sort of critique on this. This seems like we're in a really bad spot here, even though it seems like the protesters are doing some good. Us even having this conversation right now seems to be, it doesn't seem to be looking good as far as like, are we even allowed to talk about this stuff anymore?
Well, I think in America, we're lucky because at least we have a written constitution. Not all European countries have that. Hence, these sort of measures can be imposed, albeit temporarily. If you noticed, we'll see if this, how successful this anti-Semitism so-called legislation is as it makes it through the rest of the legislative process, and surely would never meet muster at a high court level when challenged, obviously. So, I mean, you'd have to dismantle the First Amendment completely in order to accommodate this. It's so ridiculous. But Britain has already gone through this, basically. And even it had to stop short on the compelled speech in Britain, but they still managed to destroy the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn through a fake anti-Semitism crisis. So what's happened is this is an act of desperation by the Israeli lobby, by the establishment, by U.S. politicians, and by doing so, they've completely overdone it, and they've turned this into a farce. So the term anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic doesn't mean anything anymore. It actually never did. It never made sense. just on its face. Anti-Semitism, what does that mean? You're against Semitic people. Of course, that's never how it's applied. So it itself is a meaningless term. It's arbitrary. It's chosen because of its arbitrariness, because you can use it and project anything you want on your target. So it's a bit ambiguous, like climate change. It can be anything you want it to be.
Yeah.
Hence, you can enforce any type of thing using it as a sort of your instrument, your tool. So in terms of speech in America, this is just a temporary attempt, and it's going to fail. But you can tell that they want to buy time. So that these things are all being thrown up now because Israel and the lobby see the finish line. They see the finish line. They're emboldened by what they've done, by what Netanyahu's done, and they think, wow, it's terrible. How they'd speak to themselves in polite conversation is, it's terrible what's happened to the poor Palestinians, but we're very close to kind of resolving the problem after all. I mean, I know that sounds craven, but that's what the conversations are like over cocktails.
I think Jared Kushner, when he slipped and said, well, once they get the problem solved, there'll be beachfront property over there in Gaza. I think a lot of people were thinking that same thing. And we've said this from the get-go, those of us who've been paying attention to what's been going on in occupied Palestine for quite some time. This was never about getting Hamas. This was about ethnic cleansing. They want that land. They've expanded their settlements so far along the way throughout these years. They haven't been paying attention or, abiding by the 67 borders to begin with. But we did see a little bit pushback from Iran at one point, right? I think there was a time where we saw there was some hope. I know there was a lot of people who, what happened on October 7th, they looked upon it as the resistance finally pushing back, because so much stuff has happened since 1948 in occupied Palestine. The Palestinians have been oppressed for quite some time, especially in the Gaza Strip. So a lot of people thought and saw October 7th as a way of a resistance pushing back. Some people saw Iran pushing back, fighting back as a way of a resistance. A lot of people have also been sitting on the sidelines waiting for Hezbollah to get involved. Do we see any chance before this project, this greater ethnic cleansing project being completed by the Israeli Zionist state, do we see anybody stopping them or coming into this situation and saying, okay, we're going to throw a little thorn in the side over here and maybe stop the Zionist state from completing this task?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, the axis of resistance as it is now, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran, Hezbollah in South Lebanon, the Hashd al-Shabi People's Mobilization Units in Iraq. Included in that is the Islamic Resistance of Iraq, Ansar Allah, aka the Houthis in Yemen, and of course Hamas and the Palestinian armed resistance factions in Gaza, and even in the PA, although dormant still, I would count that in the axis of resistance. So, and they do operate, they do coordinate, but the difference is that each of them are autonomous. So Lebanon could do something strategic in that sense, but their first priority is not Palestine. It's not Gaza. It's protecting South Lebanon and the people in Lebanon. So it's a defense force. At the end of the day, the U.S. and the Britain and others have branded it as a terrorist, an expeditionary terrorist organization. It's not, and they were fighting ISIS in Syria, etc. So they're clearly not a terrorist organization, although they're just going to be labeled by that anyway. So I don't see them. If you listen to the speeches of Hassan Nasrallah, is very clear and deliberate about what their strategy is. And this is somebody who does what they say and says what they're going to do and does what they said. And so hence the Israelis will hang, off every word that he says on his speech. They're paying attention. They can pretty much take it to the bank. He's very consistent. But if he does announce that there are going to intervene, then the Israelis got to be worried at that point. But the whole thing is shifted, because before in 2006, Israel had, total dominion over the skies of Lebanon, able to bomb Beirut airport and southern Beirut, Dahia districts. And they can't do that anymore. Hezbollah has said, you hit Beirut airport, we'll hit Ben Gurion airport. And so if Ben Gurion airport is damaged, that's the only exit point for a lot of Israelis to flee in the event of a conflict. That's total meltdown right there for Israeli society, not to mention the air bases that house F-35s. This is why the U.S. have brought in military support, because if Israeli bases come under more attacks, they have to move their planes to a safe place. So there's all sorts of problems that are popping up because of advances in missile technology, drone technology. They've already knocked out the eyes and ears in Memoron base, which was hit, I think, in December. That was the eyes and ears for Israel that coordinated with GCHQ and the NSA in Cyprus and Israel. And so this was an important listening space. They hit it twice. And so that was for all their drones to guide them and for targeting reconnaissance in that part of the country, the northern territory of occupied Palestine, Israel. But they can't, Iran, these other countries can't just intervene. They have to think about what's going to happen, the ramifications, how many Iraqi civilians will die if Israel retaliates, or the U.S., how many Lebanese will die. The leaders of the axis of resistance have to calculate these things. They can't just go and hit Israel as arguably a nuclear armed country. So they have to calculate these things. But I think Iran is very over a long period of time, they're prepared to inflict death by 1,000 cuts on Israel. And we saw on April 14th what Iran is capable of doing by even unloading all their old drone stock, flying lawnmowers and whatnot, and then hitting with a couple of medium-range ballistic missiles and damaging essential Israeli infrastructure. That's why Israel didn't respond, because if they did, they would have been inviting the gates of hell to open for them. And that's the end of Israel's deterrence. Israel's deterrence requires the U.S. and all of its allies and all of the naval assets to shoot down all these missiles for them, and the U.S. bases in Iraq and northeastern Syria. That's the Israeli deterrence. Now you know what the U.S. foreign policy is about. It's not about oil or anything. It's about an extended deterrence for the state of Israel right now. All those bases and positions. That's what it's for.
So Patrick, we're looking ahead, and you said earlier that we're looking at this narrative change that's happening. And I think I agree with you. I'm kind of seeing they're planting those seeds, changing the tune, trying to keep people to understand, we're all about peace and love and democracy. You always see those words being thrown around. Before you came on, I don't know. I was thinking that this is going to go all out in the street, right? This is what we have protesters getting angry. They're getting more vocal. We were talking earlier on the show about how vocal they should be, but everyone's kind of playing their role. We're playing our role here. You're playing everyone's playing their role. And I don't know, like if you're right about that, I'm hearing this, like if the oligarchy does a little shift and starts saying, no, this is for peace. Once they wipe out Rafah and it's about peace and love, what can we do to fight back? How don't we have to then make a shift on our end? When I say us, I mean everybody else that's not a psychopath. I mean all of us. Yeah. What should we be engaging with other, like, people on the fence, the kind of Zionists, half not. They want to know what's going on. They're not. What should we do? Can we build more soldiers on the ground, or are we screwed either way because they're just gonna shift it on us and we can't do anything about it?
There's a lot of stuff going on. If you're talking about the pro-Palestinian protest movement globally, the resistance to Israel and US and what they're doing in the world, whatever, it's very prone. First of all, it's very prone to infiltration of lots of political groups, and for different reasons. This is what groups tend to do anyway, naturally, to get involved and become the center of attention. But also there's nefarious, because not only do you have the FBI potentially infiltrating some of these protest things and then radicalizing aspects of it, and then you have bomb scares and whatnot, and that's used to demonize and shut it down. But you also have Israeli infiltration, a Zionist infiltration as well, because they want to get in and break it up and destroy it from within too. So there's a lot of dangerous vectors there for this movement. So that's a bit of a problem. There's always going to be a more radical element. Portland, whatever's happening in Portland, that's going to be the tip of the spear for the radicalization of the pro-Palestinian movement. So you could just watch that. It's probably feds all over the place as expected. You have to bite your tongue on this and just move forward. I had a conversation with some activists in New York about this on a show this morning, and it's like, if you're concerned about this, you just have to, if that's your concern, that rogue elements will come in and screw this up, this great movement that you have, you just have to become more active and get more people involved, and focus on some simple principles. And I actually think this has really great things going on, because very simple demands: boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and an end to U.S. arming Israel. If you just stay focused on this and nothing else, it's going to work, and it's already showing results in terms of institutions adopting the demands of the students. So it's always going to be messy, and anything this broad-based is going to have problems, and there's going to be infiltration. There, God forbid some major spun up faux terrorist attack is done. I mean, the 70s was rife with this stuff, back in the Baader-Meinhofer, you had the campaign for nuclear disarmament, you had the pro-Palestinian movement, you had the anti-war movement, socialist movements, all overlapping, and members moving between groups, and Carlos the Jackal and everything else. That was total chaos, totally infiltrated by NATO intelligence in Europe. And it was a mess. And then that was used to kind of usher in the modern police state, as it were. So we're seeing now that, that's the big danger, is this is going to ramp up the police state. This is going to be used to ramp up the police state. You're already seeing a direct attack on the First Amendment and basic civil liberties, full frontal attack. Yeah. So let's not kid ourselves. What's the establishment prepared to do to shut this down, and then to tighten the screws once it's shut down? I think they're ready to do anything, and the only thing that's gonna check them is the mass, or the amount of people, or the level of political awareness across the board. That's the only, that in the end of the day, political awareness is the only thing you have. You have nothing else.
Yeah. Anything else for Patrick before we get Mr. Henningsen out of here? We're so sorry we spelled your name wrong.
Right.
I'm glad we were able to correct it really quickly. Hey, listen, every single one of these movements, it's always, I think a lot of people refer to that book, Disaster Capitalism, right? Which kind of points to the theory that even if they didn't, plan the attack, there's a lot of people who said that October 7th, it was a planned attack because it manufactured consent to let the Netanyahu government do whatever they want. There's people out there like Scott Ritter says, no, they were caught with their pants down, concentrating so much on the West Bank that now the Netanyahu government, along with a lot of the other radicals within the Knesset, to really push forth with this ethnic cleansing project. But there's always going to be some risk for them to co-opt this message, to co-opt this movement, and use it against us. Thank you so much for coming out here and explaining to us what you see from your perspective. Let everybody know where they can find you, Mr. Henningsen, what you got coming up, and any fun stuff. If you haven't gone and followed his Twitter, ladies and gentlemen, please do so. I follow it on a regular basis. I got to meet Patrick at Rage Against the War Machine. It was awesome to meet you then. It's always awesome having you come on any show I'm a part of. But let everybody know where they can find you, where they can get more Patrick Henningsen if they want more.
Sure. Oh, first, on Sundays, we do a weekly omnibus show called The Sunday Wire. You see the neon sign behind me, 21st Century Wire. That's every Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern. Monday to Friday, we're at 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, TNT Radio. So I do 7 live shows per week, Monday to Friday, Sunday, and then I host on Twitter Spaces, or X Twitter Spaces, usually at least one show per week live with a panel, and we talk about geopolitics and do Q&As and stuff like that. So you can find me at 21 Wire on X Twitter, and TNT Radio Monday to Friday. So all this stuff, drop links to everything every day on X Twitter.
Yeah. And he's still making little videos, because he's still, even with the 7 shows and the live shows and the Twitter talk, he still's got more information to get out there. He's filled with so much great information. Patrick Henningsen.
And I want to talk to you about election integrity, Craig. So I want to get you on our program ASAP to talk about this issue. Yeah, because I know you're on the forefront of that one.
I just did the Minds Festival, and I debated a guy by the name of Destiny on election integrity. I got I got to say, it was very quite interesting because I know
he did great.
Yeah.
He did great.
well, a lot of people don't know about election integrity, and I have a unique perspective being able to go down to Latin America and witness 5 other general elections, another election in Latin America, to see an actual fair election played out in front of your very own eyes. It really changes your perspective on what's going on when it comes to our elections. So anytime, Patrick, I'd love to come on and have that conversation.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that.
Go find him, ladies and gentlemen. Patrick Henningsen.